The man with the broken back. What's the
Yes,
story?
I broke my back yesterday, and this is not how a man with a broken back is supposed to look, is it? I'm supposed to be prostrate with IVs and
And a
everything, but
full body cast on.
there's like levels of broken back, right? Like there's levels of having a cold, I guess.
You've got the best broken back that anyone could
If you're
ask
gonna
for,
break your back, you want to do the broken back that I've got.
which
Broke
is what a
back
T. What
mountain.
what
Fuck
what
if I
number
know.
is it?
I don't know. It's down. He said you have a perfect spine, great bone density, and I'm like, oh,
Amazing.
it's just like I just spilt paint all over a nice white. And I'm like, oh, I fucked it all up.
A little chink in the armor.
Yeah, I can't. I'm really struggling with what the hell is going on. Like I haven't gone for since I've moved here. I haven't gone 6 months, 7 months now without having a bad accident.
But then you're on a farm. Like, don't you think that that comes with the
And
territory
there's
or
plenty
not?
of farmers around here. I don't think that have an accident
Oh,
every six
okay.
months.
And they're big pins in your arm,
Yeah, like
getting your
nail in my
body
foot.
shredded.
Nail in my
Right.
foot was the first one here. Then wrapped around an auger. And then I snapped my wrist, and now I broke my back. Like it was. So I'm building a tiny home in the backyard for someone because I need to hustle in some money because business is so awful. And I was on the top of this like pruning ladder, which is like a 3-step ladder. So you have like you have your ladder that you walk up, and then there's one pole coming down, not two.
Right.
So pretty sketchy little things, but landscapers use them all the time. And I just had one more piece to staple in of the wrap around the outside, and it buckled under me. And I'm looking at the top of the tiny home now, actually, and it's about 13 feet up, maybe more.
Is that what you fell? 13
So
feet?
all I can remember, yeah, I was on the third row from the top of the ladder, and all I remember was the ladder kind of twisted like this, and it threw me. I think I fell off the inside. I did a roll. Thankfully, my arm didn't get caught in it. Your face is like blurry,
Really?
super blurry.
Where's my camera? I wonder if it's to do with my camera. I don't know where the camera would be.
Technology.
Let me just rub this.
Got Vaseline on your lens.
Well, probably. That better?
A little bit. Maybe it's bad Wi-Fi. I don't know. That's a bit better. Um, yeah, and then I just remember the ground coming up very, very fast, and then slam on the floor, on the ground, hard ground. And I just remember writhing around. The first thought that came into my head was like, I need to stretch this out. I can't have this stop my day. And I like did child's pose, yoga. You know
In
child's pose?
presumably, oh yeah, in agony. I
Yeah,
mean,
in
what kind of
agony.
pain were you?
That was the knee jerk reaction of me. Like I got on my knees and started to stretch it out, and it was so painful.
So
And
you could move.
I was moving around, and then I felt like throwing up. I was in shock, and then I was just pouring sweat, like pouring sweat, and I just rolled on my back, and I was like, oh, this is awful. This is really bad. It's my whole lower back. So from probably my weight up to, yeah, my whole lower back was just on fire.
Wow.
And I called for help, and no one could hear me. So I lay there for about 45 minutes. And then just slowly, I was staring up at the trees, slowly started slowing my breathing down. But it was like slowing my breathing down coupled with really angry at myself for falling, like just frustrated. Like the first thing in my head is like, I got too much to do. I can't have this.
I don't have time for this.
Don't have time for this. But
Was it the fault? Sorry,
every
was it the
accident I've
fault?
had is like that because
Yeah, it's never a good time.
yeah, it's never a good time
When
to
you
fall.
finally die, it's like, I really don't have time to die
Yeah,
today.
this week's not going to work. God, can we do it next in December when it's really raining and everything's miserable anyway?
Yeah. So was it the fault of the ladder? The ladder just randomly buckled, or did you overstretch yourself to do something and compromise the ladder? Or?
One sec. Feels like I've got jaundice with this light. Do I look like I got jaundice?
No,
I've got
so.
this light on the side here. Blue light. How about that? Was it the fault of the ladder?
You said the ladder
I'm going
buckled.
to take the ladder to court. Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't have...
When you say you're angry with yourself, were you...
Well, because really, it's like when the auger accident happened, there was net under the ground. I should have stepped back a couple of feet. Like all these should haves, right? Like mountain biking, I hit that jump, I've hit it 20 times, and then I hit that bad. So it's like, was it my fault? Yeah, it was my fault. I hit it wrong. The way I hit it was wrong. That ladder, I should have adjusted it more and spent more time, but it seemed fine. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't being reckless and I wasn't rushing, and I do rush a lot when I do work, and I would have beat myself up more. It's like I've gotten a rear ender before when I was texting, and I felt awful, like just to the core, like an idiot, like you fool.
Especially
and I've
when
also
it's
gotten
texting.
and I've also gotten a rear ender where I was just driving and the guy stopped really quickly, and I didn't have that same awful feeling. I mean, it still sucks to get in a rear ender, but yeah. So I should have used a different ladder. I should have probably steadied it a little more. I wasn't moving overly fast. I was just kind of doing my work. I work pretty fast anyway. But and finally, I saw about 45 minutes. Tara comes over. She sees me. I was like, Tara, like this. And I look over and she's like, hey. And she's like fixing her shirt and she's wandering over. And it wasn't until she was 10 feet away she realized I was lying on the floor. And then I felt bad because she's got definitely some trauma from the last accident. And she's like, okay.
I don't want to make a big deal about this, but
I know, and you know, all I could think was, don't call the fire brigade. I do not want to hear sirens. Like, just if they do come, just turn the sirens off. Like these things that go through your head. Like, I don't want to be a silent. I don't want the neighbors to like come over and stare and. That's
exactly what happened.
Yeah. So then she calls my neighbor Kevin, who was the guy that came and drove me to hospital when I ripped my arm open with the auger. And so he's kind of traumatized too. So Tara comes over. Jobie's had an accident. He's like, fuck. He runs over and he comes over and he's like, and I'm like, sorry, Kevin. He's like, oh, fuck, Jobie, you got to slow down. And yeah, so then they call 911 because it's back. You don't mess around with your back, right? And,
well, that's what I was thinking. When you said you flipped onto your all fours immediately, that would have been a massive no-no, really. With a broken back, you shouldn't have moved.
No, I shouldn't have moved. I was trying to stretch it out.
Of course you were.
Get back up the ladder.
That's the one thing. Stretch it out, get back up. Oh, well, deal with it later.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, anyway.
It's a miracle that you didn't exacerbate it then. Or maybe you did, but unknowingly. But, you know, still, that can really cause a problem if you move suddenly, can't it?
I know. It was probably not the smartest thing to do. You're still
but you didn't know at the time.
You're still very blurry, Abigail. You have to put up with blurry Abigail. Anyway.
I'm not blurry on my end.
Yeah. We'll see. So then they call the ambulance and the fire brigade because the ambulance guy can't lift me. So everything happened and all the sirens were going. And I was like, oh, God, this is so embarrassing.
So embarrassing.
Song and dance. And the guy comes up, he goes, how old are you? I'm like, what's your date of birth? Because they want to see if you're conscious, right? And then he goes, who's the prime minister right now? And I'm like, I don't want to say his name. And they're like, high fives.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Laughing gas on the way to hospital, which made me feel, have you ever had laughing gas?
Never.
It's like being stoned, bad stoned.
Really?
Like you kind of talk. Well, for me anyway, it was like all my voice turned down, and then everything started moving and I was like, you know what? I'd rather have the pain and than this feeling. So I just gave it to him back. And thankfully, like being in a small town, you get much better treatment. There's straight into the ER.
Hello again.
Yeah, and literally the guy's like,
Jobie's back.
yeah, he's like, I remember you. You're the guy that came in and I said, do you want pain meds? And you said to me, it's only pain.
And
He
he's
goes,
never forgotten that.
yeah, he's like, I've told friends about that. It's just pain. And then he starts sitting down beside me and pulls up the computer and it pulls up your file, right? And it's all quiet. And he's like, holy shit, man, we got to get you a bubble wrap suit. It's like going through all of
The
the
laundry list.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, those are the ones that only happened while I was here, and on the island. But they took such good care of me, like CAT scan right away, all this stuff. And I was just hoping it would be like, yeah, you're gonna have bruising, go home. And I was like, you've got a broken back. And I was like, dun dun dun.
And they still send you home.
Well, he said, if you're going to break your back, this is like this, there's no surgery required. We don't have to put a bodysuit on you. You're just going to, it'll just heal over time. It might cause you trouble down the road, which how can it not, right? You've seen the picture, it's kind of crushed.
It was the one that I circled.
Yeah. I had a perfect, he's like, you got a really good back. And it makes you realize too, because he's like, your bone density is really good. And you think, okay, like, it's so important that you stay fit and strong, because if you have a fall like that and you've got shitty bone density and you're not exercising, it's a whole different story, right?
Well, I was listening to this guy the other day talk about why older people fall more often, because they start to not be agile. And so the things that we take for granted, where we dart in and get something, an older person's losing their agility. But he says really what it's to do with is if you lose muscle mass, then you lose bone mass at the same time. So your muscle mass is such a huge factor when it comes to bone density. So weight resistance training, he just bangs on about it all day long, that the older you get, the heavier the weight that you should, when you're young, it's about reps. And when you're old, it's about weight, like the heaviest weight you can carry.
Yeah.
And if you can carry 70% of your body weight during your 40s and 50s with I guess it was kettlebells, you'll be able to open a jar of pickles when you're 70.
Yeah.
So that's what's so humbling, is us being able to carry 70% of our body weight now will ensure that we can open a can of pickles in our 70s. So that's what we're going to be rejoicing over.
I opened a can of pickles today. Woo.
Well, our mum, she's got arthritis, and these things are
that
a
doesn't
huge
really,
problem.
Bone density and muscle doesn't, if you've got arthritis, you're fucked anyway, right?
But I do wonder whether if there was more weight resistance training, whether that would affect whether you even get arthritis or osteoporosis. It's just a massive thing.
Do you remember growing, like in England, we always used to make a mockery of Americans because they used to work out and have nice teeth. Like we used to mock Baywatch.
Yeah. But when you look at David Hasselhoff now and how untoned his arms were, like he had this barrel chest, but if you look at photos,
he wasn't ripped.
He wasn't. He was just kind of big and kind of barreled, but his arms had no muscle tone.
No.
Like the other guys on that set were ripped. And
We're a bit of all right.
those days, I don't think the gym even existed. When we were growing up, you had
not
squash.
In England.
No, I don't think it existed.
I mean, sorry, I gotta adjust myself. It existed because Lewitt, was it Phil Lewitt and all that was into it, and there's definitely bodybuilders. Like there was a, but it wasn't mainstream. Like Jane Fonda workouts were in a bit, but working out your muscles was like very small niche, and it like now it's really mainstream, right? Like everyone goes to the gym and knows how important it is, but it took a long time to get to the UK. Like we just. In our family too, like Dad did not understand fitness at all. He thought, what's the point?
Well, he didn't like sweating for a start.
You know it's his birthday today?
No. It's December.
Jen sent me a picture.
No. It's December. His birthday. He died 5 days after his birthday in December.
Did he?
What is it? I don't know.
Jen just sent me that.
Oh, wow. So
the
that's
smile,
our dad there.
Couldn't really smile.
Looks a
That's
bit
my
tense.
ex-wife and my oldest son.
And the dad.
Then she
No,
sent me this.
he died in December, just before Christmas.
That one.
Oh, wow. How old were you there?
Back when I was a skinny little band person. Probably
You weren't working out then, probably, were you?
26. I never worked out until well, when I was a kid, I loved it because I watched Rocky, and I was like, oh yeah, and I built my own gym with dad helped me make my own dumbbells. But it wasn't until I met Tara that I started working out.
So how old would that have been? Late 20s?
No, like 30,
Oh,
35.
yeah, I was
Because
37.
I was pretty skinny in the band, like just looked like a heroin addict,
Mm.
which all the girls loved.
Pasty,
Yeah, I used to wear girls
lank, no
trousers,
muscle tone.
girls pants.
Yeah.
But I didn't even like think about like in the music world, it was kind of like cool to look
Well,
like
yeah.
that.
I
Like,
think if you were working out at the gym in those days in the music world, they would thought you were right ponce.
yeah, yeah,
They'd be like, you're vain. You're like, nah,
yeah,
mate, you
yeah. It
shouldn't be
was
doing that.
completely not cool, and I didn't even think about it. Didn't even cross my mind. And then I listened to this when I started Little Star. I listened to the CD, a compact disc,
Hmm.
and they were talking about efficiency and how like they studied it and all that. And they said if you work out once a day, you're going to be more efficient as an owner than if you work through that 1 hour. You know, like
Right.
exercise. And it just clicked in my brain. And from then on, I just gone to the gym,
Wow.
and it's just become a habit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Tara's got a dietitian that she's working with right now, and it's kind of like heavy protein. Like she would realize that she wasn't eating near enough protein,
Mm.
and so she's actually shoveling down more food and losing weight
Mm.
of the right food. And
Yeah.
the funny thing is she's plateaued now, and the lady says to her, "You need to eat more protein." Because your body is this, you've changed your benchmark and your body is settling down, so you need to then up the protein so then it starts functioning, and then once you get to the weight that you want to be, then you come down to your whatever it might be, what a sensible rate is. You don't keep chomping, but it's coupled with weight training. Like she's heavy into. She pushes that. Tara's having a hard time getting into that. I mean, it really is about creating a habit, right? Like.
Yeah.
It just becomes like brushing your teeth.
Yeah. I mean, I don't enjoy going to the gym whatsoever, ever. I am not a gym rat.
No.
But I've been doing it for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years since I was 37. So coming up 10 years, actually.
Yeah.
And now I feel guilty if I don't. But I only do 3 times a week. And I do the weight room for 20 minutes and then the cardio for 20 minutes and then the sauna. And I'm out of there. You know, I don't want to be there 1 second longer.
Yeah. It's like, why'd you go? Fear of not being able to open a jar of pickles when I'm 70.
When I'm 70, literally. And it's just pure discipline. I'm never, I never, no, I'm watching the clock. Get me the hell out of here. And I'll only do the exact thing that I'm meant to do to get the maximum results. And I do plateau because the girls, my daughters, will say, you're not stretching yourself enough. I'm not pushing myself enough. And it's so easy to just do the same machines and not be creative and just, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I listened to Joe talk about it, Rogan, and he's 64, and he says he doesn't do bench press anymore. He just does all like mobility exercises with kettlebells.
I think he must be 54.
54. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. And
but
so he doesn't like do the massive weights. It's just like a lot of reps with a fairly decent weight. Because you get injured.
Yeah.
But it's weird because since the accident with the auger, when I go in the mirror, like this arm here, I can put my whole hand around this arm and almost touch my.
So it's a lot thinner.
Oh yeah, like I don't know if it will. Like
nothing to compare.
You see, it's kind of got this stretch mark here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like that arm versus this arm is like so different. Oh, I don't know. Why am I doing this? It's not going to work. see?
with a sweater on.
No, you can't really
No,
see
I
it.
can see.
Yeah,
I can see.
it looks pretty fun. It looks pretty funny when I'm at the pool and I put my arms out. It's like pin arm.
So, do you think it's because they actually cut away muscle, or when they sewed it up, they kind of tucked it in a bit?
There's definitely a big divot here and like right here in my forearm
Mm.
because that's where I lost a bunch of flesh. But up here, it kind of, I think my arm twisted and that was the wound that just wouldn't heal. And the surgeons
Right.
really didn't focus on it too much. They only focused on the stitching up the arm. And so up here actually took the longest time to heal. And it's almost like there's an elastic band around it's like tightened in. So my tricep
Really?
is like restrained.
Hmm.
So there's certain exercises that like tricep exercises where I've got barely any strength. Like these hammer lifts where you lay down on a bench and
Yeah.
do this. Like this
Yeah.
arm, I could just do like tons of weight. This one is like
Yeah.
barely
And which you
tricep.
don't have any feeling still in your hand, or has that come back?
No, that's come back.
Oh, nice.
Thank God.
That's
From
encouraging.
the wrist break, yeah.
Oh, that was from the wrist break because you had a pin put in. Quite a few pins, didn't you?
I had a plate. But I can't feel anything on my forearm. Same as my leg.
Okay. But I think if your fingers were out of action, that would be awful.
Yeah,
So
it
you've
sucked.
got, yeah.
Yeah, it would get really cold. Feels the cold.
Really. So it's amazing how the body can just bounce back after
I know.
these traumas.
It's incredible.
You think about the trauma that your body's just been through, that it will inevitably recover from.
I know.
It's just incredible.
I know.
It's working so hard right now.
Yeah, Tara was kind of tearing up because it's just been so many, like the last 2.5 years, it's been so many, right? And
big traumas.
Oh, yeah. Just like, what am I doing wrong? Like, how come? Like, I don't get it, you know? I'm like, I know I rush and I understand that. And I need to maybe, like stop and eat my lunch and enjoy it instead of shoveling it down and going back out there. And other people see it, but people see me working and they think, oh man, you're like a Tasmanian devil. I'm like, dude, I've slowed down. Yeah. Like I'm going pretty chill and they just still think I'm mental.
But in your mind, do you think I couldn't go any slower? This feels the right pace to me.
Yeah, I think it's just, and I have gotten since these accidents, I have started to like, you put a ladder against the house and it leans a bit, and I'd be like, yeah, I think I'm good. Whereas most sensible people would be like, put a piece of wood under this end, but that means going to get a piece of wood. So I've gotten better at taking the time, and like retrospectively, I just would have made a slight adjustment. I would have been fine. Right. But it's like, fuck, when it happens, you're just full of regret. You're like, damn it. But what can you do? It's done. Yeah.
It is. And the fact, like the kids say, you're the luckiest unlucky guy, because the amount that you, like yesterday, yes, you broke your back, but it's the best type of break. You'll probably bounce back in a few weeks.
Yeah. I've still got my arm after the auger.
Yeah, I mean, there's an amazing amount of luck. The unfortunate thing is that these accidents happen in the first place. It's just, what's that all about?
I know. And I don't have a spleen, for real. So Paul Kane was wrong.
So was that because it was removed, or you weren't born with one? So when they did the...
No, when I fell off the building when I was married to Alison and I ruptured my spleen, it burst inside me.
Yeah.
They had to do an emergency removal. And then as I was recovering, I went to the vineyard and the guy and Paul Kane said, stand up. The prophet, Paul Kane. He's like, you don't have a spleen, but you will have. It's coming back. And I'm like, I was talking to my bookkeeper today and he's like, yeah, I watched a movie about it. You know what they do is they plant people around the building and they just listen in on conversations. And they'll like lock into people and they'll find out some of the details and then they'll feed it with a headphone. I'm like, thinking about it now, I'm like, I was in leadership at that church. And he probably, I don't know, like, how can you get that information without sounding like a farce? Do you know what I mean? It's not like he said, okay, John Arnott, like, Tony Robbins?
Well, that's probably where your accountant's getting it from, is that Tony Robbins will have people planted in the audience,
But Tony Robbins
apparently.
is that motivational speaker?
Yeah, but he will speak into people's lives, like, stand up, tell me what's going on in your life. I haven't seen I'm Not Your Guru, but apparently in there, he's picking people out in the audience and basically saying you need to end this relationship, walk
Yeah,
out the
I've seen
door.
that.
And from what I understand, there were people sitting next to, in this particular example, next to that woman who garnered that information that she was in a bad relationship. So then he had the confidence to say, get out and leave this relationship. So he had kind of inside intel. But I think back in the day, that that's what I heard. But in the day, like 30 years ago, they wouldn't have had that type of technology, do you think, to be able to pull that off?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough to say. Like,
Even if you didn't, let's say if someone said to me, you don't have a spleen, but you're going to, I've never had an x-ray. How would I know either way? Some of
yeah,
these things are quite safe to do
right.
a prophecy and go,
But a spleen of
no,
all things, right?
it
Like
is
there
a
was
bit
1,000
random.
people in the crowd.
Yeah.
I remember because I could barely stand up. So I was still in like recovering from the operation.
So that was pretty,
And
wow,
it's
okay.
not until now because they were doing like a mammy, when
Mm.
you're pregnant,
Yeah, yeah.
they had one of those and they were moving it around and like, oh yeah, you don't have a spleen. And then I was like, really? And I told them the story in there. They were like, I think because on drugs, I was probably freed up a bit. And I told them the
Yeah, yeah.
story. They were like, wow.
That's
Um,
random.
yeah. And then funny enough, I had a CAT scan and they said, well, we didn't quite understand what was going on because you actually have an extra rib, which is super, super rare. So we were confused by the CAT scan. What?
Okay.
So Gabe's like, oh, it's probably a broken rib floating around in there or something.
How was his response to the whole thing?
He was fine.
Okay, so it doesn't trigger him,
I don't
you
know
know.
what he internalizes. I mean, I haven't posted on Instagram like I did, a
Oh.
couple of times ago because I've learned that lesson that I was looking for love in all the wrong places.
Oh.
And I was like, I realized,
Instead, you just did a big podcast.
yeah, told the
Millions.
world.
Tell the world. No, did that feel
I know
better?
if Mum watches this, she'll be like, "Oh my God, you didn't tell me." No, I
Don't
mean,
tell her.
like Raven Jazz, there's this thing like when you have kids, you think, okay, or someone you love, you're like, I should tell them because they would want to know, right? Not thinking about how it makes them kind of panic. Like when I tell Raven Jazz that I've had an accident, they get kind of angry.
Really? Because they think you're being irresponsible.
Yeah, they're like, Dad, we want you to be around. Why are you doing these silly things, putting yourself in bad situations? Like, stop.
They're parental towards you,
That's probably
basically.
really unhealthy, isn't it?
Well, no, that well, it's true though that they've got that maternal parental attitude, like, oh, what's Dad done? Oh my God, no, Dad, you need to. That's the kind of thing a mother would do for their child or a parent, looking after the safety of their child. I mean, it's quite sweet. I don't think it's unhealthy, but that is a parental response.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I think deep down there, yeah, like Tara was teared up, and I'm like, what's going on? She goes, I don't know. I just think it's bringing up abandonment issues. Because what if I'd snapped my neck? Or I could have easily
Yeah.
landed right on my head.
You could have been paralyzed today.
Fuck. Thank you,
I mean,
God.
that's,
Thank you,
you know,
Lord.
that would be
I
the
know.
ultimate to me. Whenever someone says broken back, the
Yeah.
first thing I think of is, oh, paralyzed from the waist down.
Like our cousin, right? Cousin on the island here who I've never met.
Right.
He was into climbing and he went on his 18th birthday or 21st birthday. He went to Squamish, did some rock climbing, bouldering, had a little fall, and he's been a quadriplegic ever since.
Just no, I can't even bear it. Any story like that is just
Yeah.
too much. And that could have been you yesterday, which is the really,
Yeah, it's amazing how we can skate through life. All the times that you glance down at your phone and look up and just miss something. Like, what if you hit a child?
yeah, I know.
I've started putting my phone, the little magnet thing that your phone sits on.
Yeah.
you know, you have the air intakes in your dashboard.
Yeah, yeah.
I've put it on the far one.
Right.
So I have to reach over. And it makes me just, it's not cured the problem,
Hesitate.
but it makes me think, oh, whereas when it's right in front of me, it's just too easy to touch and I don't even think. It's just
Yeah.
subconscious. But over there, it's like, oh yeah, just hold your hand back. Don't do it. Don't check that.
Of course, yesterday it would have been really useful to have a phone instead of
It was
lying at a
literally
point.
10 feet away from me and I couldn't get to it.
Right.
I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I tried to crawl and I was like, no, not happening.
You need one of those pacemaker necklaces.
I know. That's exactly what my neighbor said. One of those things that you just hit emergency. Like, Jobie's in trouble.
Jobie's got a straight line to the hospital now.
I just want this to be over. Like, I don't want any more. And I'm like, okay, should I be thinking seriously about not mountain biking anymore? And
That's
everyone's
what
like,
I
well, you
thought.
can still mountain bike, but you just don't take the jumps. And I'm like, well, that's
What's the
boring.
point? Yeah.
But
Yeah. What's the point?
I love the community that we've met, you know, and it's really hard to step back. But you realize it's only a matter of time before you have another fall up there in the mountain. Like, it's just, you're playing with death, you know? It's like, it's going to happen.
How serious would that be, though? I mean, a motorbike accident fatal, a bike accident. Do you know people that have seriously injured themselves?
Well, they did a program based on North Vancouver, and they took all the extreme sports. And I think mountain biking was 75% higher risk of life-changing accidents than every other extreme sport.
Isn't that amazing? With no machinery, like it's not like it's it's not.
It's hard to appreciate unless you've like sometimes me and Gabe say, like, if Mum actually came and saw what we were doing, she'd like lose it. So you're hurtling down a mountain with shorts and t-shirt on and a helmet with jagged rocks and sticks and trees everywhere. You know, I mean, a friend of mine had an accident the other day and he was upside down against a tree, hanging in a tree, and there was a stick that just missed his eye, like right here. So it could have been just like, so, and some of the rocks we roll down are literally straight down, almost a vertical, like straight down. So I don't know what to do.
Would that be that's about the only thing you could give up, because you're not going to change your livelihood or anything else.
No, I mean, I need to just slow down, like think, like really, really consider safety, like precautions, and like, you know, for sure. And I have been making big steps towards that. Like, I used to be way more reckless. It's like when I was being promiscuous, remember you like, you should chop your dick off.
Balls off. No, I said, chop your balls off, Joe.
Didn't you say my dick?
Oh, maybe it was. I thought it was your balls. Maybe it was your dick.
That's when I was playing around with my cousin.
Should we really be saying this on a podcast?
Which cousin, though?
Which? They've got so many. Yeah. Back in the day when you were running around.
Yes.
Such a naughty boy.
Yeah, I know. It was bad.
So you managed to tone down in that area. So there's hope when it comes to safety. Which brings us to
how have you been doing?
Well,
your life of ease and just bumbling through life, like
yeah. My life is wild in good and bad ways, but there's not much I can speak of it really.
No, it's all top secret.
It's all top secret. But what I did want to ask, talking about being promiscuous, we were going to jump back into how you came to North America in the first place, because you've been in Canada or North America, because you started in the States, since you were, 21?
Yes.
And how did you get here? Because that's, 30 plus, a little over 30 years ago.
Always hurt.
And if you need to quit because if you're in
no,
pain,
I'm all right.
But we can do it.
I'm all right. I'm trying the Chris Williamson side angle.
I should do this way. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, is it? We're both side angling.
I'll do this way, you do that way. There must
We're
be
studying other podcasters and so on.
yeah, there must be a psychology to it.
Yeah, it looks more
He does it
interesting
like
than just a
this, and
straight.
he leans forward.
That's right.
That's what
You nailed it.
it looks really
And you have the
uncomfortable.
white headphones.
Oh, does he do that too? I forgot
Yeah,
that.
he's got the
Yeah.
white because he's
Yeah,
telling
he's
you that
definitely forward.
earpods rot your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't lean forward right now. That's for damn sure.
So,
So,
1993.
sexual awakening.
Ah, yes.
Is that what we're talking about? Or my travels
Well,
to
how you
America?
got to America, which was through sexual awakening.
Right. Well, we were raised in a very sexually suppressed environment, I would say. Wouldn't you
Yeah.
say?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
fundamentalist Christianity.
yeah, no touching, no sex before marriage, no touching in our family, like not much hugs, not very tactile. Didn't really talk about it. I remember Dad took me on a sex walk when we lived at Rehoboth, and it was awful. He walked down the industrial park, and he's like, "So how's your gear stick?"
Okay.
I'm like, what? Your gear stick. Oh, it's just so awkward. Didn't flow.
Unreal.
Yeah, so I didn't have a girlfriend until I was 18 or 19. I thought that I was ugly, that no girl would ever like me. Had really low self-esteem and was afraid of women, even though I had 3 sisters and was around women a lot. I was just afraid of that whole thing. So I just would bury myself in work. And that was like my escape. And then Sarah came along. First Sarah number 1.
Right.
First edition. And she
was a pastor's girl.
Yeah, pastor's girl, because we had that little like something or other happened at our house, so we were trying to join the 2 churches together and stop all of the bickering between churches, right? And so she was over, and oh man, if I could turn back the clock and like it, do you ever get that feeling like I'd like to go back and have these relationships again and just really enjoy them all?
I didn't have enough to. No, I have no, absolutely not, because I wasn't meeting people who I'd want to do that with.
Yeah.
She seems like a cool chick who would have been a really great, solid, like, good person to do that with.
I know, and I was just so fucked up and like so afraid, and like the intimacy, like she just jumped down my throat, and I was like, what? Like all the kissing and the, yeah, and I'm like, oh man, what a waste. Like I could have really enjoyed that.
That's such a male thing to think.
Yeah, is it?
You would, well, I think so. Like, not many women would be, oh, damn it, as if I could have another go at that one. But what's unfortunate
and I broke her heart, right?
And she was probably the most solid girl on the scene for a decade.
In the town.
And then you had the psychos that followed. And it's unfortunate that really that reflects where your head was at, the fact that you went for the psycho Sarah, not the really...
Yeah.
Probably she would have been great.
That's like when I met Tara, I was like, she was so normal and like safe. And I was like, ooh, I'm not used to this. I'm used to fireworks and craziness. And, so I cut that off. And I remember driving up the road and just shouting out the window, like feeling like I had just broken free from jail. That's how I felt when I left Sarah.
So you were happy?
Oh, I was so happy. I called it off in front of her house.
She felt too clingy?
I didn't know how. I just felt like so overwhelmed with going from 0 to 100, literally overnight. Like she wanted like to be on me all the time and then like with me and like and I mean it was an amazing thing, but I was also like whoa.
Yeah.
Like I just didn't know what to do with it.
Well, in those days, that could easily have ended up with a marriage in less than a year because of our Christian community.
Could have still been living in Launceston.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing with Christianity is you were fast-tracked, and it was that terrifying feeling of, is this the one? I don't know if it's the one. What do we do? Are we meant to get married? It was really
way too
intense.
much pressure.
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah. So
if you had just thought, big deal, she's probably not the one, let's have a good time. Yeah, maybe it would have been different. It would have been great, but she probably had that same Christian intensity that he could be the one, maybe he's my husband. And that was
Yeah.
just too overwhelming to have coming at you.
Yeah.
Because that is a lot.
Yeah.
At what, 18?
Yeah. And then at 19, we had these friends called the Gillespies that were American missionaries in England. Lovely family. I still fondly think of that family.
Mm.
And Sarah,
Was
who
an
I'd
au
met,
pair.
she
Like
was
a
an au pair
nanny.
for their family.
Yeah, who
Yeah.
came from Arkansas.
Came from Arkansas, which couldn't have been more opposite than England. Like, it's like
Yeah.
literally going into the Dukes of Hazzard.
Amazing.
And so I met Sarah, and I'm like, wonder what I was attracted to, because she used to cake on the makeup. Like, you could
like
see
emulsion, white. like a primer that you would put on your walls.
All over her
She
face.
had a makeup line. It was pure white almost.
Yeah. She looked like the band The Cure or something.
But I think she was exotic. There was that.
She was American.
Yeah.
She was amazing accent and like really vivacious and
wild.
She was out of her element in a new land, right? And we just went from 0 to 100. And then Sarah was very sexually active, even though she had a very, very staunch Christian Bible Belt kind of parents. She was so she constantly was trying to push me towards having a sexual thing, and I was so paranoid that God was going to strike me dead. So she would come to my house, and we would sleep in the same bed, naked. I wouldn't do anything. I kiss her and stuff, and she was just going mental. And then I remember she talked me into it, and I felt so guilty.
Really? How awful.
Yeah, it was
so unnecessary.
What a waste.
Really,
could have had a
was.
good old romp.
Well, I think you did after a few months, didn't you? You kind of soon let go.
But I always felt guilty.
Right.
And then she said, and then it was time for her to go back to Arkansas. And so she went back, and we talked on the phone, and I'm like, I'm going to come over for Christmas. And I went over for Christmas, and I just never came home. And when I met her on her turf, it was a very different story. It was just different, right? She was super, super in her element. And I was just a child. Like, I was so immature as far as relationships go and intimacy. And her dad, so I show up at her dad's house, and he's like, first thing he does is show me all the guns. About 25, 30 guns in the house. And he showed me one that the KKK used to use. And this is a Bible Belt preacher. He's like, you want to touch it? I'm like, no, not all. But they had no problem. Like, she used to call black people the N-word and think it's just normal. They all called them that. And there would be KKK sprayed on the bridges, and really racist down there. So that was a crazy time, because she would sleep with me and then sneak out of her bedroom window, get into a car, and then drive into town, and then go and be with this other boyfriend that she had that was a Turkish guy, because he was like not a DJ and cool, and I was all messed up in the head, and then I just knew that something was going on, and I was an absolute disaster.
And would you follow her, or stay
I didn't
up
have a
and wait
car.
for her?
So I'd stay like a loser. I'd stay up and wait. And then I remember walking the road at like 2:00 in the morning, and she came driving back, just like, what are you doing out here? I'm like crying. And she was like, just confused by, and so yeah, it was super dysfunctional and really, really, really lonely for me. And then I came back to England for Martha's wedding, and then went back to Arkansas. And then I remember Mum said,
why did you go back? If it was really lonely, there obviously something that appealed to you.
Well, when I left for so I talked to Mom, and I was a bawling mess, and I said, she said, I feel I can't let go of Sarah. And she's like, you've created a soul tie, which I still believe happens when you have a sexual relationship. You do have a bond. I
haven't heard that word for decades, soul tie.
Yeah. And so you have a bond, right? And
you'd call it trauma bond now.
Okay.
probably.
Yeah, and so I broke that soul tie, that ungodly soul tie, and it actually
Mm,
kind of worked in my head. It clicked, and she didn't have anything in me anymore, and it
mm,
drove her crazy. Soon as I didn't want her anymore, she came after me hard,
mm.
and I was like, no, and drove her
And you
mental.
really were genuinely, you weren't playing games.
No, like
No.
I really felt like she didn't have that power over me anymore, and so I made friends down there, and I had started a life. I was painting houses, and had an absolute wild fun time because for the first time in my life, people told me that I was attractive.
Mm,
And I didn't know what to do with that. Like the classic American, like, you look great today. Wow. And it's like in
mm,
England, it's like, well, if you look good in England and you come down the stairs and you look great, you would say, Dad would say, well, you look awful,
mm.
which really
Yeah.
means you look great.
Mm,
I mean,
yeah.
it was
British humour is pretty cruel.
complete opposite, right? And so then when someone actually tells you you look good, you're like a flower that all of a sudden gets
Mm,
watered. You're like,
yeah.
ooh. And and my accent stood out like a sore thumb in Arkansas. So everyone was, and every nightclub was line dancing, and it was just fun. It was so fun.
Mm,
Like just the whole
really.
super kind of Texan kind of culture was like rodeos on the weekend. And
Totally different world. I wonder
yeah,
if it's still like that because that was probably America at its best. Probably just before things started to kind of deteriorate for them.
well, yeah, that was when Bill Clinton was in, and he was an Arkansasian, an Arkansas
Mm.
boy. And
And they loved him probably.
yeah, and they loved him. And yeah, it was like boomtown. Everything was
Mm,
happening. We ate out 3 times a day, which is in England. You like eat out once a
mm.
year, maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
So it was like, why would I want to leave here? This is
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
And I met with this guy, got friends with this guy called JC, and he would party hard. And it was just like an education for me in
Mm,
probably a lot of worldly things.
mm,
And what I noticed happening throughout when I pieced together that kind of section of my life up until I was about 25, 30, is I'd always get tangled up with these older women. And I think looking back, it was like I was going after my mom
mm. Well, probably
or like,
maternal mother figure.
yeah.
That would make sense. Yeah.
And because I grew up with you and two other, like I grew up on Mary Poppins and
Anna Green
Anna
Gables.
Green Gables and dressing up old fashioned and very feminine upbringing, even though
Mm,
I'm a very masculine type of
mm,
person. And so I was able to tap in subconsciously. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was able to connect with women in a way that was like kind of dangerous. It was like a power I had.
mm. Well, you
Because,
discovered it there, did you? You
yeah,
discovered, oh,
I kind of discovered, and
superpower.
it came naturally, but I just discovered this ability to be able to not be the macho dude, but to the guy that listened to feelings
Mm. The
and
sensitive guy.
sensitive. Yeah. And it was like not something I planned on or did it. It just kind of happened and came out of me. And then I started to see that it was actually quite powerful,
Mm,
because these women were hungry to be listened to and to be heard.
mm,
Um, and yeah, I had some wild times down there.
mm. I don't
Um,
think it's necessarily a bad thing because I notice when men don't have any female siblings when they grow up in a household of men, it's so obvious when the way they interact with women, it's
mm,
entirely different than if a man has a sister or two. And they're
right.
just their level of awareness and
Hmm.
sensitivity. I would almost say I wouldn't want to get in a relationship with someone unless they've had exposure like that, a stepsister, a sister, cousin, whatever, something where in their childhood, because it's so obvious to me when boys just are in a boy dominated household.
Like jock.
They just have that whole missing element of
Yeah.
understanding.
I
It's just
wonder
not
if it's
there.
that or if it's like I've thought about if we've relived life. You know how like Gabe, my youngest boy, people always say he's an old soul, and Raven
Mm,
too, actually.
yeah.
Like, and you can tell Gabe sends every friendship circle he's in and all the circles he's in. Like Gabe is he sends ripples people talk about
Mm.
Gabe because
Yeah.
he's so charismatic, and he
Mm.
picks up on these things that young kids don't normally pick up on.
Right.
And I wonder whether he's lived life a few times. Like you and me have talked
Mm.
about that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
having been around the block of
Mm.
life. And then you talk to some of these like jock type characters at the bar when you talk about like spirituality, and it's like they just don't understand what on earth's coming out of your mouth. Like they're like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. They've come as far as they're
Two
going to come.
dimensional women
Yeah.
and women and money,
Beer.
women, beer, money, hockey. Yeah, and you talk about anything deeper, like the meaning of life, and it's like right over their
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just that they haven't had sisters. I don't know.
I think it must be a combination because some people just aren't philosophical and don't reflect.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just in that existence mode and don't pick up on people around them, don't have a community of friends who are philosophical and thoughtful and pondering the meaning of life.
Mm-hmm.
If you grow up and you're not exposed to that and it is just pure sports, I'm around people like this is a huge hockey community here. And the level of conversation is just, I don't even know what to make of it. It's so superficial.
Didn't you
It's,
find that in New Zealand too? There was just this
yeah,
lack
I mean,
of.
that was different. They had people our age acted like baby boomers. They just didn't have that vulnerability.
Hmm.
And I do think Canadians generally do, but then there's these sports crowds that are, I don't know what to make of them. They're living through their children when it comes to, the funny thing is with hockey families is that often the parents are unhealthy. You
Yeah,
holding up all right?
yeah, I'm doing right.
I can tell a hockey, if I'll go to a friend and her kids watching hockey and the parents look really unhealthy,
Right.
like not
Yeah,
in
eat it
shape,
in
not
Tim
fit.
Hortons.
Yeah. And it's bizarre because hockey's such a demanding sport and so expensive.
Yeah.
It's strange that the parents almost just sacrifice their life for this sport that is this whole crowd. Like when they travel, they'll all rent the same hotel and it's like a block party and it's all just soda and, unhealthy food. And it's so strange because you think, well, hockey's a sport. Why is health not part of this equation?
Well, for the people playing it, probably, but you look at soccer fans. I mean, bunch of lagerlouts, right?
Yeah, I suppose so. It's
I
just a
I
funny
like
thing.
the biking crowd too. Are pretty like sometimes when we're climbing, you'll be climbing for an hour and a half with someone, just the two of you, and we'll talk about. When I'm with one on one, I sometimes talk to these dudes about like men's retreat that I went on, or
Mm.
and it's like the first time they've ever heard about. Like sometimes someone will tell you, "Oh, I'm going through a tough time in my marriage," and the other person will be like, "Oh, that sucks, man." So anyway,
Yeah,
and it's like, but I'm like, I naturally want to dig a little bit, and
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like the other person, I'm thinking of a certain dude that I recently had a bike ride with, and it's like I'm saying stuff that he's maybe never heard. It's like
Mm.
really interesting and beneath the surface, and it kind of got a little bit tender and emotional, even though we were
Mm.
biking. You know what I mean? And but I'm around these this mountain bike crowd, and there's something like I have these friends that are like we talk about deeper things and business and spirituality and the meaning of life and all of this stuff, and I really love that. But I
Mm.
actually really love being around like my neighbor Kevin when we go
Mm.
fishing. We don't talk about anything except just trivial stuff, and I actually find it really relaxing.
Mm.
Like when we go on
Yeah,
these biking, there's sometimes 3 or 4 days, right? And we go
yeah,
down and we're
right.
sitting around the fire at night and we just talk about just funny shit and
Mm.
and it's actually quite kind of it doesn't cost you anything.
Mm.
Sometimes a deep conversation actually wears you out.
Yeah, yeah. If it's
And
too
I
intense,
quite enjoy sometimes I like both friendship groups, but I quite enjoy
yeah.
just a
Shooting the shit,
yeah, like
telling stories,
yeah, I mean like me and Alex, right? Like growing up, my buddies were very
mm.
much like that, but we
Pranking
just
around.
yeah, just pranking around, just talking about like how to fix your car.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
not
I think
not
men are particularly good at that variety of conversation where if I'm around a group of men, it's an entirely different conversation than it is with a group of women.
Mm.
And men just know often how to have fun and relax. I think when men actually get together, there's a camaraderie there that's really unique.
Mm-hmm.
Like the company of men, they'll start doing push-ups and it's kind of slightly competitive, but, you know, not too heavy. It's just men like, oh, do you reckon you could run here and back? And then all of a sudden you've got this thing going on. It's a childlikeness that men seem to keep with them that women just generally don't.
Well, if you get a bunch of men drunk, they usually just do like let's let down the neighbor's tires.
Yeah.
You know, it's
men
like
as children, right?
Yeah.
There is that child, but women would never imagine a group of women letting down someone's tires. People would be like, what? That's just weird. There's something disturbing about that. But men, we all kind of applaud it. And it is funny how there's a different expectation when it comes to men.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoy the company of them because it's a totally different type of conversation.
Mm. Yeah, the challenge is when you have two different friendship groups is like when you have a party, do you invite them all or do you invite this group and then have another party for this group? And that's just my controlling mechanism. Like most people would just feel like, oh, just invite them all and see what happens. But me, I'm like, I get anxious.
What if
I'm
they
like,
don't get on with each other?
Yeah, what if they start talking about politics and these guys are really lefties and these are right? And oh God, overthinking it. But
so when you got to Arkansas and then you were working, but you found out that something was going on in Toronto.
Right. So I stayed there for a year and I only had a visa for 6 months, but I didn't really think much about it. And I was painting houses. I was living at this place and partying on the weekends and having just a blast. And my mom and dad, who were super into the Vineyard Church stuff, said, oh, we're flying over to Toronto because there's this outpouring of the Holy Spirit and it's sending ripples through the world and we're going to go and see what it's all about. And I didn't even think about that. I thought, oh, okay, well, you're on the same hemisphere. I should just drive up and see you, not really understanding how big America was and how far Toronto was away from me.
How long was that? That must have been days.
I think I drove for like 40 hours without stopping. I just kept on going.
So in your mind, were you literally just going to say hi?
Yeah.
And why didn't you fly?
I didn't have any money for that. Didn't even think about it. So I had a motorcycle in Arkansas and I had a friend who was working with me and he had a pickup truck. I said, can we swap vehicles for a week? Just going to boot up to Toronto, say hi to my mum, and I'll be back.
He must be real pissed off with you.
And then, And
he never got his car back.
He never got his car back.
Wow.
And so I drive and then I realized, because that was before GPS and cell phones, didn't have a cell phone. So I'm driving this truck and I realized after a day of driving that I was driving along Michigan, not through Michigan, for a whole day. And then when I figured it out, I had to go all the way through. And I don't know how long it took me, but I didn't stay anywhere. I just kept going. Maybe I slept on the side of the road. And I got to this border. And I was like, oh, Canada's not America. Because in England, we don't really learn about that kind of geography. We learn about European geography. Shit. I opened my I kind of sort of knew, but I didn't realize. Then I opened my passport. I'm like, oh my God, I've overstayed my visa. So I tried to forge an S for September out of whatever. Maybe it was a February. I don't know what it was. So I'm in there and I'm trying with a pen, trying to forge it, not realizing they have a digital.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hand my passport in and they call me in and they're like, you're not going to go back to America, but you can probably stay in Canada. So I drove across the border.
What did you think at that moment?
I think, shit.
Because all of a sudden that life you had just evaporated.
Yeah, the gravity didn't. I've always managed to fumble my way through life, making up, I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
So you didn't feel like that was really necessarily true?
Maybe, yeah.
For you?
Yeah, I thought I'll figure it out. And So yeah, then we were in Toronto, and I remember like, oh, all the roads were called like English, like Queen Elizabeth Way and stuff
Mm,
like. It's like, where is this place?
Victoria. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I pulled in to the. It was right by the airport, the Toronto Airport Vineyard.
I
This
can't believe we could actually navigate in those days to anywhere,
it was
without.
dangerous because you have a map, and then you're driving, and then like trying to like read a map,
It's incredible the skill level of I'll meet you at this
multitasking.
point at this time. The
Yeah,
fact that you guys even connected without cell phones, without GPS.
I think we had a lot of grace for being late back then, and people getting lost and waiting. Like now, like we got no patience for it
Mm.
because you know that full well that they've got Google Maps.
Oh,
But then I think there was kind of a grace in our
yeah.
heads. But I went straight to the vineyard, and
Which was a church.
which was a church in an industrial park. So it was a pretty small building, and this church had little did I know, but this church had like a vineyard is a worldwide movement. It's a charismatic church movement, and I guess something is happening in this church where people were getting healed, not physically healed, but like emotionally healed. And so people were starting to fly there from all over the world, mostly worn out pastors, like people that were just absolutely burnt out from ministry and getting refreshed. Topple,
And
topple.
the refreshing took the form of people rolling around on the floor,
Lots of laughter. So there would be
animal
like,
noises.
yeah, animal noises, people being animals, lots of like spontaneous laughter. So there'd be someone preaching and then laughter would break out. And it would just, yeah. And no doubt there was some beautiful stuff coming from it because some of these pastors were really exhausted and burnt
They're
out,
burnt out, yeah.
disillusioned. And so I drove in there to see mom and dad, and I just went straight into this building. And it was like, what the hell's going on? But I'm coming from a place of like muted, pushed down guilt that I'd still gone back on God. I've been promiscuous. That was the cardinal sin, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Except for
You were a
murder.
prodigal son at that
Apart
point.
from murder, that was like probably the
Oh,
cardinal sin.
yeah,
Shagging.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So did you instantly feel guilty or conflicted?
I think I definitely felt that I was a black sheep,
Mm.
and that God was frowning on me.
When you walked in there, presumably there was several hundred people and there was a lot of
Oh,
bizarre things going on.
yeah, there was hundreds of people. There was an overflow room with a video projection of the goings on, and they had taped lines all over the church. So after the sermon, the chairs would all go away and everyone would stand on these lines, and the pastor would go through and pray over them, and they would always fall. There was catching people. And then there would be all of this goings on, in the church service would go on until 2 or 3 in the morning. And there was a buzz there, like a real buzz.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so mom and dad were there, and who were those other pastors from Liscard?
Like John
John
and
and
Terry and Chris.
Chris. Yeah,
Can't remember their names. Yeah.
right. And so I was completely taken by surprise about
No preparation
how big a
for this.
deal this church
Yeah.
stuff was. And so I remember being like a second day there. I was standing in this row, and I was listening to this sermon, and I don't know what, I started to feel this roar come up in my down here. And I started like, and dad's looking at me like, what's going on? And I was like, and I got down on all fours, and the guy's still preaching. And then I started roaming around like a lion. I felt like a lion.
And no one else was doing this.
No one else was doing it. There wasn't a lot of animal stuff going on. It was mostly just laughter and tears and that kind of stuff.
You
And
felt compelled to do this.
yeah, I felt compelled, and I hadn't seen anyone else do it. And I hadn't heard of anyone else doing it. And so I would start. So the guy was preaching, and I walked my way through the chairs and everything, and then people started like snickering and laughing and like, what's going on? And the pastor kind of said, "Oh, we've got something going on down here." And I walked up, and every time he would preach something that kind of struck, I always start roaring, and I felt like a lion. I moved like a lion. Like Dad actually filmed it.
I remember seeing it. Yeah.
I've never watched. I
Yeah.
was too embarrassed. So I did it. I did that, and then that kind of all ended. And then the next night, I started to feel it again, and then this weird thing happened where it started to become a performance. I remember the feeling of like people are wanting this to happen now,
Mm.
you know, and I was like, well, I need to do this because everyone's expecting. It was a bit of an anomaly.
Mm.
Because it wasn't until a year or so after that people started like acting like snakes and weird stuff. It was
Chickens. People would literally be going around pecking. I mean, what? When
I
I
think it was
describe it to
this. I
people,
think it was like tapping into this like staunch, because it wasn't just charismatic people. It was like Catholics were going, and it was just like this,
yeah,
like almost like this
people would be glued
spiritual
to their
comedy.
chairs. They would turn up at the lobby of the hotel when the meeting was finished and be crawling on their hands and knees, trying
Yeah,
to get from the lobby to their elevator to get to their
like
room.
drunk.
And the people who worked at this particular hotel that was close by, the Constellation,
Yeah,
almost the entire hotel was filled with pastors who had just come from meetings,
yeah,
who sometimes were literally pinned.
yeah.
They just stood
Can you
there
imagine what they
for
were
like three
thinking?
hours. They can't move. Some of them were mute. They couldn't talk.
Yeah,
And some of them would be like shaking. You know, people's hands would just shake for days, sometimes weeks, or their head would be shaking and they'd prophesy and you could barely see their head
oh, that
because
was
they would
Stacey Campbell.
Stacey Campbell.
Stacey would
But
do it, and she would be moving like 100 miles an hour, and the voice would sound like perfect coming out of the microphone.
you would get whiplash or concussion for sure if you did
Yeah,
that. She would have to be so relaxed not to harm herself. But I do remember people trying to leave those meetings, and the parking lot. You can look it up on YouTube because I've shown friends people trying to leave those meetings and
yeah,
crawling on their hands and knees and
yeah,
rolling around, and then they've got their husband like supporting them, and they're doing these jerky movements. And these are elderly people. They might have come from an Anglican church or a Catholic church or a Brethren,
yeah.
and they'll go there skeptical, and then suddenly they start behaving really strangely. And I can't explain that to people, what that phenomenon.
No.
Either people were very persuadable, but some of those people were not. They were skeptical, and they
Well,
almost felt indignant that this was happening.
yeah. Well, I got physically healed there.
Right, yeah.
So the lion thing happened, and then what I got really damaged because this woman came up to me. It was Craig's mum, Craig the guitar player,
Mm.
Craig Smith, and she's like, "You're operating out of the flesh. You're doing this for attention," and like whispered it in my ear.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that is like telling
Crushing.
someone to take all their clothes off in front of everyone. Like I felt like dog shit.
Wow.
Like how reckless is that?
Yeah.
When you really step back and think about it, like a lot of these people were acting and they thought there was so much ego when you
Yeah.
really think about it now, looking back, like the people had like this kind of, they walked with swagger,
What, the leaders?
the leaders. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
I get it but it was a tough thing to navigate for them. But yeah, I was so damaged by that. It was like stripped me.
So do you think that there was an element of truth that she was picking up on your conflicted feelings
I
of
think
people's
so.
expectation?
I think she was picking
So
up
she
on something
wasn't
legit.
wrong,
No, she
but
wasn't.
she was very insensitive.
Yeah,
Because
she just
really,
wasn't
who
nurturing.
cares? Like,
Yeah,
who
who cares?
cares?
Yeah,
You'll figure it out.
yeah.
Why
Well,
do people need to monitor everything?
I think like all the way through my church experience, even with Nolan and the feast and everything, there was this needing to control it, needing to control everything.
Mm.
Like, yeah,
And also, like you say, their ego would be wanting that superiority of being able to just say things like that. And then their ego would think, oh, I'm so perceptive, and
yeah,
that was a word of knowledge or whatever, and it's all just stroking and patting themselves on the back.
Yeah,
for
100%.
being so insightful.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff is so damaging. When you think back, you think, let it just wash out in the works. Like, these kids will figure it out. So
Well,
what if it's a
you
bit of a
think,
performance?
when you think about Jesus when he was on the earth, and it's like when he preached Sermon on the Mount and the loaves and the fishes, there would have been all kinds of craziness going on. He didn't say, "Oh, children, be quiet," hush, hush. We're trying to. It would
Mm.
probably be chaos.
Chaos. Right.
Sheep bleating and donkeys walking up while he's talking. It's like, get the donkey off it, trying to preach. And I
Yeah,
mean,
it would have been chaos.
yeah. And yeah, I think that's always where these moves of God fall on their face is man tries to control it
Yeah.
and
And they
cannot help
re-traumatize
itself.
people.
Yeah, and cannot help itself. It's just innate in us to like let's not think let things get too crazy.
Yeah.
Let's draw lines on the floor and let's have catchers. And then they had blankets for people, and it's like all started to kind of
Have a
you
formula.
can have control in an uncontrolled way. You can have uncontrolled control, if you know what I mean. It's like chaos. Yeah, it's chaos, but we still have control on the chaos. I don't know.
Mm. But when you look back, I mean, many of the people that have left that movement would say it was an absolute cult. It was inauthentic. People were tapping into sensationalism. I mean, there would have been elements of that, but some people believe that was 100%. The whole thing was just fake. Where did you land in your feelings about it in reflection?
I don't think it was all fake. I know what I felt, and it was real.
Mm.
Um, I I I also know that that hysteria is a crazy. Like when I watch some of these things on television, these charismatic churches, and like I'm like, oh my God, that used to be me.
Yeah.
It is pretty amazing how crowds can be moved by a charismatic leader or some kind of hysteria to do the craziest
Well, that's
things.
what I wonder, whether we were all a victim of those leaders had so much charisma and
Uh-huh.
magnetism.
Not psychosis, but
Yeah, mass
manipulation
formation.
and
Yeah, crowd
hypnotization.
manipulation. So Dan Brown, I think he's called Dan Brown. He's the magician who turned half of his tour when
Oh yeah, to
he
a
would
faith healing.
basically to a faith healing, and he said, "I'm an atheist, but the rest of the evening we're going to do as a Benny Hinn type, modeled after one of the healers. We're going to do a healing meeting, and I don't even believe any of this." And so he, years later, went on Joe Rogan and he said, to this day, I still get letters where people say I was genuinely healed on that night. And I think Joe Dispenza would say that's the power of the mind.
Mm.
And that he would probably say that the way you healed yourself from that sickness shows how powerful a person's mind is, and that it's not necessarily God. Because Dan Brown said that what he took from these faith meetings and why he modeled it is knowing that adrenaline suppresses pain. People would think they were healed, and maybe a day or two later the pain would start coming back, or the sickness.
Mm-hmm.
And that crowd manipulation is so powerful that it can suppress people's ailments.
Mm.
So that was his
Dispenza says
thinking.
that, right?
Right, but
Because he says it's a perpetual thing.
what was not taken into account for Dan Brown is that some people would genuinely forever be healed, and he couldn't explain that. But I think if Joe Dispenza were to talk about it, he would say, and that's the power of your mind, that you can heal yourself.
Yeah, I mean, biblically, God talked through the mouth of a donkey, right? And he talked through crazy people. So, yeah, I mean, it's just unexplainable.
Mm. It was a phenomenon, wasn't it?
I mean, I don't know if it's still going on. I don't know. It's just become a structure now.
So that was 1994 that it broke out. And that went on for a solid decade, probably, daily meetings that
thousands and thousands of people. Like the airport strip, which was right outside Pearson International Airport, those hotels were going bankrupt. Like the Constellation was going under. And then
right, until this happened.
this like filled that hotel for years and put it all back on its feet. Restaurants were overflowing, taxi cabs lined up around the block every single day. I mean, it brought a lot of money to that town. And
they started to do international deals to Toronto for lower rates because the demand to go there just suddenly spiked.
Yeah, it was like flying to Vegas.
So we could get there for £200 to Toronto.
Yeah,
I think
wild.
Even less sometimes because there was just thousands and thousands of people.
So it was exciting being in the eye of the storm. It was pretty
for Christian. And so after a few weeks of being there, and mum and dad probably went home, did you just feel like, did you have a thought of what should I do with my life now? Or did it just evolve and you had a come to Jesus moment where you repented from your wayward ways? And
well, they had a conference at the Constellation. David Roos was that. So it attracted all these incredible musicians too in the Christian rock scene. And there was a call to the front. And I remember being by myself in this little corner. No one was with me. And I was just bawling my eyes out. And I felt like I was the prodigal son. I felt like I had I missed God. Because I spent a lot of time alone as a child and I used to talk to God a lot, whoever God is. He's like a friend. And I felt separate from him. And I was genuinely remorseful. And there was
sense of separation.
Yeah. And like, I am so sorry for giving my body away. And I had this sexually transmitted disease that is uncurable. And I don't think I even asked God to heal me. It was just, I am so repentant and genuinely, genuinely sorry and genuinely want to be close to you again. And this disease has never come back. And I have definitely done things that the God of my childhood belief would have been frowning on. I've definitely, and I haven't
pushed the limits on that one.
Yeah, and haven't been, and often I wonder, I was like, but it was a gift that he never took back. He was like, he gave you, and I can't explain that, but it's a disease that never goes away, and it went away, and that was how many years ago?
Well, 30 years ago.
30 years ago. So I still tell people to this day, I was like, I can't explain this, like total atheist. I'll just tell them a story. And they're all like, wow. I'm like, I got no explanation for it, but genuinely.
It's a great party trick. I
drink my own urine and I got healed of.
Yeah. STDs, as they say.
Yeah.
So you got healed and you basically settled into life there.
Yeah, well, I still had this truck, right? And I didn't have any money. And the truck was breaking down. So I went to a mechanic and said, hey, can you fix my truck? I'll paint your office for you in trade. And he's like, yeah, sure. And then he took a shine to me, Leo. And then he's like, well, why don't you come live on my yacht downtown Toronto? So I went down with him and we had quite a good time. Like he had a girlfriend that was like half his age. He had just got out of jail for smuggling cigarettes. I think there was some kind of prohibition happening and he smuggled a truck load of cigarettes and got put in jail for it. I didn't know that, but he got just out of jail. But that relationship turned pretty sour after a while. But yeah, and then and then the Toronto got so big, the airport vineyard, that they moved to this massive facility that was like a tech facility, turned it into a church in Atwell Drive. And I just was slept on the floor of the church.
And volunteered?
Yeah, and just worked with the sound guy. I did whatever, like the whole place needed painting.
And how did you eat?
There was a kitchen there, remember? You worked in it.
But were you allowed free food?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to piece together. So basically you slept at the church and they were willing to give you free food in exchange for helping.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Yeah. And I would wake up every morning to cranked Father's House.
Yeah.
Son,
Brian
you are my precious son.
Do.
And then I made friends with Paul of France, and
Yeah,
he said, hey, you can come stay at our house, and I slept in
yeah.
that disgusting basement that smelled like dog shit and dog pee.
And at that time, I think families were willing to take kids in because the general attitude was this was the end times, and the only thing that mattered was this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the amount of generosity people showed was pretty incredible, really. But I think that everything else just was irrelevant when it came to the end times, and that revival was just around the corner. And all
Yeah.
these young people were showing up with no work, no money. And
Yeah, it was like extraterrestrials coming down to a city, and all of a sudden everything in your life, it shifts. It's like we got to get down to the space flying saucer and see what's going on
mm,
today.
yeah,
It was like just do what you have to do to get by so that you can get back to the church,
mm,
because that's where the action is happening.
yeah.
It was like the happening nightclub where every
And
night was a
kids were
new.
quitting school and not getting education. Like as the years rolled on, it
Mm,
really did affect people's life, like how they lived their life. And well, what's the point of getting an education? Because the revival's coming, and they'd be working at the church in the bookshop,
yeah.
um,
Oh
and
yeah. I mean,
and really had no prospects.
the inner circle. Once you got into the inner, it was pretty dysfunctional, and like the actual original youth team from that church felt really betrayed by the movement, because all of a sudden they were just like backburnered, and their community was blown apart, and there was always visitors in their church, and they just felt so there was this really dysfunctional undertone. um there's a lot of like kids that were just really fucked up. I mean, I remember that was like the grunge days, so like Doc Martens, ripped jeans, Nirvana.
Mm.
um
The Cranberries.
yeah, just a lot of depressed kids that were drinking around the back and
Smoking pot.
just feeling lost in the shuffle but wanting to be
Mm.
around it. But yeah.
That's all they had, I think. I do think that the youth group of that church was notorious for being like, there were parents who wouldn't send their children to that
Hmm.
church because it was trouble. Like there
Yeah.
was a lot of troubled young people
Right.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a wild time. I've actually reached out to Belinda, and she wants to get on
Yeah.
and talk more about her experience there. But how many years? And then you came.
I came in 1995 and I was 15. And again, I was being homeschooled, and you guys had all left home. And mum and dad, all that we were talking about was this, what they called it, the Toronto blessing. And I think they'd flown back and forth a few times
Yeah.
and then said to me, well, why don't you go out? Jobie's there now. You had started dating Alison,
Hmm.
and things were looking a bit more kind of solid so that I would have somewhere to be. And I thought, well, what have I got to lose? Mum and dad were pastoring a church in England. I was in the middle of the countryside, really lonely. You'd all left. I was the youngest and I had nothing to lose. I'd finished school at 15, was doing nannying work for the Gillespies. So they're 6, 7 kids I was looking after.
Mm.
And it made sense to me because I literally had such, and I look at it now and I look at my own children at the age of 15 and their infrastructure of socializing and what a good life they have. And my life was just so empty and void,
Yeah.
because mum and dad's primary focus was just 100% church.
Hmm.
And I think we were all as kids very eager to leave home and just get independent. And so as the straggler, I just think it was really unfortunate that I'd never experienced a youth group. I'd never been to school since I was 5. So my exposure to what most young people, like a posse of friends, I'd never had that.
No. Yeah,
Um,
you spent lots of time alone.
yeah.
And Martha, you
And
were really close, right? And then when she
yeah,
left,
but
there
she
must
got
have been a
married at
huge
what,
void.
18, 19?
Yeah.
And she moved away to Liskeard. So that was, half an hour's drive, which in England is a big deal. Um, so when I caught a flight to Toronto, that's the first time I'd ever been on an aeroplane. It's the first time I'd really seen snow, and I arrived February the 15th. So it was the depths of winter in Canada. Never seen anything like it. And we flew straight in and went straight to the church and experienced, that
And you look like you
overwhelming.
just walked out of Anna Green Gables.
Oh man,
Your
I looked
big
like a Texan
bouffant of
barmaid.
hair.
I had the plaid shirt, and yeah, they thought I looked like a Texan barmaid. And I was like, that wasn't the look I was going for. I was going for Anna Green Gables. Oh, terrible. But then, so we arrived at one of the meetings, and I'd never experienced jet lag, didn't know what that was. Suddenly I just passed out, just completely wiped out on a chair, and then woke up a few hours later completely stunned. And Mum and Dad went off to the Constellation Hotel.
They just left you there?
I piled into Kim Unruh, who is the youth pastor, his van, because these youth pastors would just drive kids home at 2 a.m, all over Mississauga, through the suburbs, just
in the crazy snow,
dropping off kids all over the place. It's incredibly selfless when you think about the demands on those adults who had families. I wouldn't do this shit. Like, not at all. I don't know how much they're being paid, but anyway.
I think it was just very exciting, right?
Yeah, they probably at that time loved it because it was still only less than a year into this whole thing, this phenomenon. And I was told that I could sleep at your girlfriend's house at the time. And so, I don't know what time it was, midnight. I don't even know what time. I climb into this van, go into Mississauga suburbs, and I'd only just met Alison that night. Oh, you can come and stay with me. I was looking at piles of snow, just overwhelming amounts of snow. And it probably was minus, 15. All of these things I'd never experienced. And we went into this dingy basement apartment of hers that she lived in with Lucy. And Lucy was away, so I slept in her bed. And I woke at 3 a.m. because of jet lag. And I didn't know why I was awake because no one had told me that this jet lag thing happens. I was just wide awake I didn't even know where I was, somewhere in Canada. And I must have, at 6 o'clock in the morning, heard Alison leaving, but she didn't come to me. And then when I crept out of the room, the apartment was empty. So she had got her ride into church because that's where she worked. And I was there, and she scribbled a note. Call Jobie if you need picking up at this number. And it was like 905 Vineyard. And I thought she's forgotten the rest of the numbers because I didn't know, because all we had growing up was a rotary phone.
Oh, yeah.
So her phone had the alphabet on it, and it took me about an hour to figure out how to get the rest of the numbers. But I was there was no food in the apartment. And I remember putting on, there was a CD there, Duran Duran, I Won't Cry for You, Ordinary World, that had just come out. And that was, I remember crying, going, it felt so
alone.
It was my first real experience of absolute, complete aloneness, because up until that point, I'd only ever lived at home. Yeah. So I'd had no other away from home experiences other than like family camps and stuff.
Traveling's like that, eh? You
so disorientating.
You hit that moment, and it lasts a couple of weeks sometimes, of just complete missing everything that you've just left.
I think what I would describe it as any change, like when you move to the island, the disorientation. You don't have to be jet lagged, but when you do a sudden move, it feels like jet lag because you just feel like, I've changed my mind. I don't want to do this. This is horrible. So you eventually picked me up and we drove into the church. And I remember showing up to the cafe and I just thought, there's food. I'm not going to leave this place. I'll do whatever it takes to just be here and not go back to that basement, because that was grim. Plus, in Canada, yeah, in England we don't have basements. There was no
Oh yeah,
windows.
it
It
was
was
really
dark.
dungeon.
Yeah, and all of those things. I was having massive culture shock.
Yeah. I remember
Uh,
you used to eat and eat and eat.
yeah, because I got
Is
into
pro
panic mode.
That's right,
Because
panic eating.
oh yeah, for sure. Because what happened was, Mum and Dad didn't give me any money, and after 10 days, they flew back to England and assumed that you would look after me. And you were what, 19, maybe 20, couldn't even look after yourself.
Yeah.
Um, the only way I got food was by working at the cafe. But if I wasn't there, I wasn't getting food. And so that's where I started putting on weight. And I was like a hamster,
Yeah.
just storing it for a rainy day.
Oh, I know. I remember Alison made a big bowl of pasta that would have lasted normally a couple of days, and you had first and then seconds, and then just stood there in the kitchen and finished the whole lot. And Alison was like,
So
wow.
rude.
She's
Obviously scary.
ravenous, like tapeworm.
And that was me in panic mode, I think.
Uh-huh.
Because I think, and Mum has apologised many times since, is the lack of support as a 15-year-old. Because you were that much older, you had 5 years on me or whatever, and had gradually left home and become independent. I was like, one day I was home, the next day I was independent. No smooth entry into this.
No.
And I was acutely aware of the fact that I have to look after number one. And that's where those patterns of behavior really took hold. However, at the same token, I was exposed to young people my age for the first time in my life. And this youth group that was so vibrant and fun-loving. We would have muffin fights and water fights while these meetings were going on. You'd find these old stale muffins and have full on, like, it was nuts. What was going on behind the scenes? We were just unruly teenagers with no adult supervision half the time.
Who was the keyboard player that used to manage the kitchen?
Oh, Joe Allingham.
And he'd be like,
Totally
guys, you really shouldn't do this, but no one's listening to me anyway. Yep.
He had no authority whatsoever.
Oh, what a sweet man, though.
Oh, so sweet. But people really took advantage of him.
Yeah, they did.
Like, the kids treated him horribly.
He could play an amazing keyboard.
He was such a character with frizzy hair. And
yeah, he was the real deal. Real eccentric.
Yeah. But we were pretty unruly. And these were a group of, 30 unsupervised teenagers in this Wild West environment where things were just, I suppose, really attractive to teenagers because they are drawn into that kind of wildness. The whole environment was unhinged.
Well, it was pretty fun. Like, because when you're doing 7 meetings a day, 7 meetings a week, all day. So from, the first meeting would start like 11 and run until midnight. You needed a lot of help. So I remember they'd be like, we don't have a musician, we don't have a bass player. Can you play bass? On stage. Yeah. Like the first time I played bass in front of people, it was in front of like 4,000 people.
Yeah, same with me.
And then I remember like leading worship, and the first time I ever led worship was in front of a conference, and the worship leader got stuck in traffic. And all I knew was Delirious songs.
So we introduced Delirious to that crowd.
Oh yeah, and John Arnott pulled me aside. He's like, no one understands these. No one's heard these songs before. You can't just play all this new stuff.
Apart from people coming from England.
Basically Christian Radiohead, wasn't it?
Yeah, and when you listen to Radiohead later, you're like, they ripped those guys off.
Oh, they ripped them off big time. Yeah, big time.
Yeah, but we had no idea who Radiohead was.
No.
And so this English band called Delirious.
Biggest Christian rock band of all.
Ever at the time.
Filled Wembley Arena, right?
I don't, probably. I mean, they were just getting big, and I brought a cassette tape from England, and I remember putting it in a record, and I was pausing it to write down the lyrics for Kim Unruh, who wanted to do "Did You Hear the Mountains Tremble?" You know that song.
Yeah, they were called Cutting Edge then.
Yeah, they were called Cutting Edge, but I bought their tapes over.
Yeah,
and they were revolutionary for youth. That band, they eventually came out and did Fresh Winds, which was a youth conference, and they ruled for a long time. They were the best of the best, weren't they?
Yep. My producer did their last record.
Really? Okay. Yeah, so they're still producing stuff. Yeah. So I, within a week of being there, was on stage singing in front of 3,000 or 4,000 people at 15 years old.
So that
I
side
mean,
of things was pretty fun, right? It was like,
pretty
sure, yeah,
well.
you can
Yeah.
sing, you can hold a tune, get up there.
Yeah. Are you ready? They've already started. Like in some cases, it would be during intermission, or like can you get up mid-flow? They need a backup singer. And what we would do, I remember, you'd do the first set and then the preacher would come on. And while they were preaching, we'd go to the movies and then come back in time for ministry time.
Yeah. And ministry time, no one's listening, so you just jerk around up there.
Yeah.
Just play whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
I remember, because I could sort of fix vehicles, and I remember just turning the youth room into, like, I would just start fixing cars. So there'd be a service going on, and then I got complaints that it was smelling like engine oil.
And you were like doing oil changes?
Yeah, I was doing oil changes for so people would drive there from other parts of Toronto and their car would break down. And so while they were at the church, I would fix their car for cash.
No way.
But I wasn't very good at it. So
it'd be blowing up.
Oh man, I fixed Jeremy's car, and he calls me from the highway on the way home, and it was like cold. And he's like, Jobie, all the water's dumping on the floor. The car's steam's coming out of it. I have to get a tow. I did John Arnott's car, who was the pastor, and he came back from a ministry trip, and I serviced his car, and it wouldn't start.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And of course they had to be so gracious because,
it's a story
you couldn't
of my life.
exactly lose your shit in that scenario. These people were under pressure to be about as gracious as anyone can be.
Yeah.
So they were very tolerant.
The eyes of the world were watching.
Yeah. So for me, although I was dealing with essentially abandonment and, self-preservation, it was well worth it at the time for what I gained, which was exposure into Canadian life, cottage culture, going up to the Fellmans on the weekend.
Boys,
which I didn't even, crushes, I suppose.
Ian
I
Dutchin.
hadn't even, yeah. Oh yeah, but is it Kyle Fellman? He was the one, got away. He's still very much into it.
Yeah.
But I was exposed to young people my age, boys, I didn't care. I was just like, the whole thing was phenomenal to me. The food, the excess, North American, like what you would have got in Arkansas, where the muffins weren't this, they were just monster muffins that were
and going out for dinner was not a big expense. And you could do, like in England, we went out once a year, maybe.
Yeah. And there it was Subways and massive chocolate chip cookies. And as a 15-year-old, it was just mind-blowing to be exposed to that degree of excess, where I remember working in the cafe and looking at a slice of cake going, oh, I wish I could have that cake, but it's not dinner time. And one of the women was like, well, why don't you just have it? If you want it, have it. And I'm like, well, no, it's not lunch and it's not dinner. It's like 2:00 in the afternoon. Because I was so programmed to not eat in between meals. And Canadians just graze all day long.
Yeah, that was a thing I didn't really understand. It took me a long time to get to grips with that snacking, like bag of chips and dip.
Yeah, before dinner.
Yeah.
Like half an hour before dinner, people bring out chips and dip. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not going to be hungry for dinner. Like, what are you doing? And then 10:00 at night, you'd leave a meeting and go and get Timbits from Tim Hortons. It's like at 10:00 at night or 11 even. You're getting Timbits and it's not a meal time. Like
the frivolity of it all.
It was so excessive. And of course, people were a lot bigger. Like there was a lot of, in England, everyone's scrawny with bad teeth. But you don't eat in between meals. And there's that real kind of, I don't know, poverty mentality, I guess. I don't know, we call it self-control. But you come to Canada and it was excess. That's the only word that comes to mind. Just, if you feel like it, do it. If you want to eat it, eat it. There's no sense of that you should hold back and have any self-restraint. And that was my first exposure to North American life.
What are the traditions, right? Like, 'cause I remember Arkansas, the first thing I asked was, what time's dinner?
Yeah.
And they just looked at me. What do you mean? Well, what time's dinner? And they're like, well, we eat together at birthdays and Christmas.
So
get dinner when you want dinner. Yeah, there's the fridge, help yourself. And I always felt like so discombobulated because dinner and breakfast are like these anchor points, right?
And so when you open the fridge, was that also just like, whoa, so much
Yeah, I mean,
choice,
it was,
just stocked?
well, I mean, in Arkansas, they had all you can eat. Have you ever been to an all you can eat? Like they're everywhere.
Yeah,
And it's just
yeah.
like a buffet. I just couldn't, everywhere I turned, I mean, Hooters, I went to Hooters. It's like,
Just overwhelming.
yeah, just half naked women walking around feeding you burgers. I mean, it was just,
And the portion sizes were just obscene.
yeah.
I mean, I'm used to it now, and Canadian food is extremely expensive, so you pay for that big plate. But I think at the time, I can't remember the price of the thing, but it was incredibly cheap and excessive. And if you feel like it, just do it. And
Did
coming from
you,
England,
the thing that really bugged me was ice in the drinks. I just could not understand.
I've never,
It would
yeah,
hit
I've
me in the
never had.
face as I was like drinking. I'm like, what? How do I drink anything? Because I wasn't used to the straws. Like we never have ice in our drinks.
No, or
It was like
drinking
clank,
a
and it hit me
glass
in the
of
face.
drinking a glass of milk. I mean, no one in England has grown up drinking a glass of milk. You would
Yeah,
never pour it. Only in the
too
movies did you
expensive.
see. Yeah, the,
Yeah.
it, or even a full glass of orange juice.
Mm.
So those kind of things were just boggling. Like going to a grocery store and it was just, it was almost like a mall. It was just huge.
Hmm.
It blew my mind and it made such an impression on me that here I am living in Canada as a result of that. Because I think at that age,
Well, we were,
it,
yeah, I mean, I think we were raised because I remember working at the Gilbert's farm in England when I was like 14 or something, and I would sneak into their larder and steal little handfuls of granola because they had Alpen. They'd buy the big bag
right.
from the supermarket. I
Mm,
felt so guilty, but I was just like, it was like an alcoholic having beer in there and no one around, and I
yeah,
just had to have it. I mean, it's like granola,
yeah.
but to me, it was like we only got like that was the real deal. We used to have Revival, which is homemade stuff, which is not
Mm,
sweet at all. And they
no.
used to buy these big sacks of it. And I remember thinking they're going to catch me one day.
Mm.
They're going to catch me sneaking.
And
And I'd
they
eat it
probably would have
dry.
reprimanded.
I just stick it in my
You
mouth
just,
dry. I mean, I was like,
that's
and it had like a bit of sugar in there, right? So it was just like, oh, this is like heaven.
like, oh,
I remember stealing a little tiny bag of it and hiding it in the hay barn. And I'd just always sneak in there and have a little handful of
so deprived. I
dried,
remember, so I lived out there for 9 or 8 or 9 months that first time, and
yeah.
I didn't even own my own toothbrush. And I would subtly use other people's toothbrushes and hope that they wouldn't notice when I was staying wherever.
What?
I didn't have any money.
So you'd
I
use other
went
people's
there.
toothbrush and
I
then
went
dry it
there.
with the hairdryer so it doesn't look wet.
I went there with $200 that
Mm.
I had saved from doing nannying, and that was my money, and that was 9 months of living in Canada, and that run out, pretty quickly. That run out, and then one person randomly came up to me and gave me $100 once, and it was phenomenal. Like, wow. But other than that, those are the 2 times that I remember people giving me money, and people would say, "Oh, let's go out to Olive. What's that?
Olive Garden.
What's that? Olive Garden," which was like, ooh. um,
That was
I
posh.
would, I would go not knowing how I was going to pay because I had no money to even pay for the meal.
Yeah, and it was a horrible feeling
Oh
because
yeah,
I just felt
awful.
like constantly, like even when I was staying at La France's house and it was by the goodness of their heart, I just constantly felt like an uninvited guest.
Yeah,
It was just
it
like
is a horrible
tiptoeing
feeling.
around. I feel guilty that I'm here. I don't want to ruffle. I don't even want to pretend
Yeah,
I'm not here. And it was just exhausting,
yeah,
constantly hoping someone would pay for your meal
yeah,
or,
yeah.
and
Because people go, "Oh, let's go to the movies. Twister's just come out." And as a teenager, there's no way you want to go, "Yeah, no, I'm going to just hang back." You go hoping that it'll all work out and that someone will pay for you. And they did. People be like, "Don't worry, I'll get this," which was amazing, the generosity of people. But I think what I've realized through that, teenage years for me were all about not being a problem. Don't be a problem. Don't make yourself a problem, because I went back the next year and the next year after that. And so I lived in that state of being at the mercy of people's generosity. And I think that where other people were having their rebellious teen years, for me, I just knew should not be a problem. I must be somewhat invisible. Like, don't leave any tracks behind. Make sure I tidied up after myself. And there was a hypervigilance that kicked in, I think, because of that.
Yeah, because I remember Curtis's got awkward, didn't it?
Well, what happened was you and Alison got engaged after, 5 months of knowing each other? Maybe even less. And she moved into her sister's to save money for your wedding, and basically gave up this basement apartment and said, well, I'm moving out. We're not renting this place anymore. And I remember saying to her, well, where am I going to live? And she goes, I don't know. And I thought, right, I'm basically homeless. So I put all of my clothes in a trash bag, went to church, and knew that that night I had nowhere to stay. I could have just slept at the church, I suppose. And I went up to one of the youth pastors and I said, could I sleep on your couch for a week? And I promise you I'll find somewhere to live after that. And he put me up and I slept on that couch. But I think what happened is he talked to one of the other leaders, Ian Ross, and they took me in. Because
that was a good
Curtis
thing.
Curtis could probably see this girl struggling. And it was very good of them to not communicate that, but just to take care of me. And the Rosses came and said, we'd like you to come and live with us. And we've never opened up our home to anyone before. And they took me in for probably 5 months. And that was the first time since I'd been there that a family took care of me, because Alison was a real tough nut. She was not nurturing.
No.
It was, she had been independent and a survivor herself. So I needed a family to look after me, and they kind of adopted me. But I still had that feeling that you had of not wanting, awkward, man. You're not giving anything back. There's nothing, I can't offer anything. And it's very vulnerable. It's
I didn't like it at all. It felt like it would be like living with a violent thought. You just don't know when he's going to blow. It felt like, I don't know when this is going to turn.
Yeah.
Because I lived with Kim and
right.
the Rose until I got married. And it was still, I felt like I was just a problem to have. Yeah.
And you feel like a shadow. Because you're intruding on their personal life. You don't want to be a problem. You don't want to ask for anything above and beyond what they're already giving. And I would not wish that on my children. I mean, is it I feel like the role of a parent is to hopefully prevent your kids from, I know they need to experience the world, but I think to give them means to do that is important, to not just go, right, you're on your own, figure it out, because that's just one step away from homelessness.
Yeah, like obviously communication was hard then, but we weren't coached, right? Like mom just kicked us out of the nest and we never heard from, it wasn't like, how you doing? And let me send you some money, or,
well, they were broke themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, I mean, it made us who we are today. And
it explains a lot, though, for me, about hypervigilance not being a problem. What I'm going through right now, where I'm having to depend on people's goodness, and I've been staying at a friend's quite a lot, I realise that all of those same feelings are still there. And I don't want to exhaust other people's generosity.
What's the alternative, though? Like, how else do you deal with that situation? Do you be like, am I a pain in the ass? Do you want me to leave? Like, do you come up with it? Like, what's the alternative?
Well, I think there is something to be said where people travel and they are brought in, like, let's say they go to Tibet and a family takes them in. Maybe this is just a side of humanity that is, everyone might feel uncomfortable with it, but ultimately people are good and they do take you in, and that's not a bad thing to feel those things.
Well, I think the Western culture is not, like, if you go to like a third world country, they're far more generous with the little that they have. Everyone knows that. They open their home up and you're like a rock star. They
Right.
actually want you. It's a blessing for them to be able to have you in
They
their
would
house.
feel offended if you didn't eat what they put in front of
Yeah,
you. And
please stay. Like,
yeah,
whereas here it's like, yeah, I suppose,
people need their privacy here.
yeah, like we're all about
They
our little
want the,
castle and our fence around it.
yeah,
And like, yeah, it's
don't overstay
very,
your welcome.
I can't say I like it.
No,
I mean,
you're right. There is.
I don't like that side of our culture.
Mm,
That kind of, yeah, it's isolating. I think that's when I went to Mexico. It impacts me just watching the community and the flow of like, it's very much more open.
yeah,
Whereas we're very,
yeah.
I'll figure this out
Very
myself.
precious over our personal space. Like I say
Mm,
to the kids, "Oh, I'm doing up our guest room. Maybe we'll have someone come and rent that room." And their reaction is like, no, we don't want anyone in our
yeah,
home.
yeah.
That's our personal space."
Hmm.
And I said, well, what if it's someone your age, like maybe one of your friends who's struggling, who's kind of wanting to become independent? No, no, no. They want their sacred
Mm,
downtime space, which we didn't grow up having because mum and dad had a lot of riffraff coming in off the street.
mm.
And to introduce that concept to my kids, I realize how inflexible they are.
But
No,
they would probably, like, I know people that have like students and exchange students and all of that. And it like brings a lot to the family, even though the thought
mm,
of it for me even scares me. I'm like, so
yeah,
what if it's a bad one? Like we were talking
yeah,
about having woofers on the farm here.
yeah,
And it's like, whoa, what if it's a bad one? It's like, well, probably 95% of them are good ones.
yeah,
And a
yeah,
lot of these
probably.
relationships last, like I know my auntie here, they've always had students, and those students have, like, their kids have now gone to visit them in China. It's like deep,
Mm,
deep friendships.
yeah.
So, you
I've
know,
got a friend who's basically adopted three children. She's got six children, three of her own, and three that were
oh
all
my,
international students from like
really?
Zimbabwe, and now they're her children.
Wow.
They came over here and she decided they got on so well they adopted. That happened three times. So now she's got six kids.
That's a good way to trial out whether the kids are going
Yeah,
to fit your family.
totally.
Take you,
And it pays
not
a
you.
grand a month.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a huge amount, but because you have to feed them and they become part of your home. But for
We're
some
so
people,
privileged. Like when we think
yeah,
about cutting back, like I talked to, we're going through tough times. And it's like, well, maybe we shouldn't have avocados anymore. It's like, yeah, no, we're still, it's like we
we're not that bad.
yeah, no, it's like once you've had like terrors, like once you've had heated seats and a heated steering wheel in a car, you can forget getting one without it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, these
This
creature
is the
comforts.
real kicker: is do you go back from grass-fed beef to non-grass-fed beef? Like I've made that transition back. So 5 years ago, we could afford to fill up our freezer with half a cow of grass-fed beef, or a cat, or a pig, or
Mm.
sheep. And when hard times hit, I started going to our local meat market and getting cheap
What?
meat. And it's really actually difficult to think of investing in, oh, let's get half a cow, because that's, I don't know, a grand. It might be more now. I don't
Mm.
know, but things have gone up a lot.
Mm.
And places that I used to look down my nose at, oh, I'm not going to shop there, not at the meat market. Now I'm there every week because I
Mm.
can't beat the price. And when it comes down to it, your wallet decides.
Yeah, and I think it's what your mind tells you. Like I realize how much I put my body through hardship, and I haven't been cold plunging since my wrist snapped, and I walk past the freezer that I use for cold plunge all the time, and I like feel it's a sense of guilt, right? You should get that thing
Yeah, I
fired
haven't
up
done it
again,
this year.
and
Yeah.
it's like how easily we fall into those traps of like pain and gain.
Mm.
And I'm like, the fact of the matter is, I could live the rest of my life without going in a cold plunge and probably live no longer or shorter.
Mm.
It's just more hoops to jump through.
Yeah.
Um, and just realizing, yeah, so much. Oh, you're not eating grass-fed meat. You're gonna, you'll probably just live just as long.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
it, it it's not like you're eating McDonald's.
Well, like Peterson says, when people start earning over a certain amount, they want to live healthier, have less of a carbon foot, whatever. They start looking at more alternative ways. They're not burning tires or dung once they get out of poverty. And I think when you can, I would jump at getting another grass-fed cow in my freezer. But as soon as hard times hit, I readjust, tone things down, right, that going to be cut, that going to be cut, and adapt, which is good. But as soon as I would be able to afford it, like Sapphire, my 18-year-old, said today, do you want to split up grass-fed? Let's go in together, you and me, and buy, half a grass-fed cow for the freezer. So I've got my 18-year-old willing to go halves on it.
Wow. And
I'm like, yeah, sure, that makes it doable. But unless things like that happen, or when I financially can, I will. And I think that's what you're saying is, will I probably live a healthy life on the cheaper version? Yes. But if I can afford to do those things and get sourdough bread, and I do, because it feels good.
Yeah, it makes your body feel better. I actually enjoy the taste of it more.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so much of
you go into survival mode when hard times hit, and I think your norm then drops to here. And then I haven't even thought about grass-fed anything for several years. And she just brought it up today, and I realized, that just fell off the wagon, along with cold dipping and doing Wim Hof breathing in
drinking
the morning.
Your urine.
Drinking your urine. And you realize you just get a little hiccup in the road, and then you look back and go, oh shit, it's been a year since I did any of that. And unless you've got a pressing health issue, it's really hard to keep these things going.
And in actual fact, you probably don't feel any. I realize more and more, that we're just so hardwired to tick boxes, right? It's like you feel a little more virtuous in yourself by, I did the cold plunge, I drank my urine. I so hardwired for hard things. Let's do hard things. They make you feel better. I'm just realizing more, like listening to that Joe, whatever his name is. I've been listening to a lot of his little half-hour podcasts, and he's just talking
Spencer?
about.
Oh no, the other guy.
Yeah, the other guy did.
Yeah.
And his whole thing is like, you just create another to-do list. Like, try harder to meditate, try harder to have better thoughts. Like the whole point is you're just constantly trying. It's all effort. Yeah. Like last week I was really struggling again with anxiety and overwhelm. Oh, lost you there, Abby. Oh,
my battery's running low.
Oh, do you want to wind it up?
Soon. It's been 2 hours.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Is it really? Jeez. Anyway, let's talk about overwhelm and anxiety next time.
Yeah. Well, to your point, as they say, that's a great podcast phrase. To your point, what's another one? Preposterous is another great podcast word. Preposterous. To your point, and to add to that, what I've realized is, if I had a diagnosis of something, I would instantly go back to the knowledge of what I know and start doing cold plunges and start doing this. But without an emergency, like right now, you're probably going to be revisiting cold plunging. But if you don't have something that's in your face, a problem, it's hard to maintain it because it's just another to-do list. But if I got diagnosed with osteoporosis, I would throw myself into, methylene blue and ivermectin and cold plunging. But I think when you feel okay, there's very little motivation to go out of your way to do this stuff. It is hard. And like he says, why would you, if you feel, if it's just another, should do the cold plunge. I would understand.
Well, the anxiety that's creating is actually less healthy for you than what the benefits of cold plunging.
Yeah.
And I'm still struggling to find that place of peace where yeah, my life is so filled with that pain and gain philosophy.
The shoulds you should do.
The should
Like for
haves.
me, the working out thing, which I started at 37 and never gave up, is because of a mental health needing to come off antidepressants.
Right.
So some things get integrated to where you would never, that's not going away. This
No.
is for
And that's
life
good.
now. Yeah. Or going to bed on time. Just 10 o'clock, I'm out. I'm going to bed because of my mental health. Or drinking bulletproof coffee. I've done that for years now. All of those feel like all a very integral part of my mental health package. But any additional thing, because they work, why it's hard to add additional things
Yeah.
because it just maxes out your day.
Yeah. And what I've been learning is that as soon as like overwhelm is basically adding too much to your plate, right? And I am so good at that. I'll be doing something and I'll be feeling very peaceful about what I'm doing. And then all of a sudden I'll be thinking, I wonder if I can fit that in. And I wonder if I can fit that in too today. And all of a sudden the anxiety and the overwhelm comes up in my throat and esophagus. And just did it to myself, right? And I'm realizing through the teachings I've been listening to is that is the more you can stay in flow state, the better your life is going to be. And if you can keep on the guardrails, keep between the guardrails of flow state, like any performing athlete, whether it's a runner or a car driver or whatever, they perform the best when they're in flow, when they're out of their head and they're just like completely, like I heard this
Instinct.
testimony where the daughter was like, I'm going to try not to get stressed in my math test. And she entered this flow state and her performance was better. I think there was a nature program where a lion hadn't eaten for 2 days and he was ravenous, but he hunted way worse than the lion that was laying around all day, because the lion that was laying around all day was relaxed. And the other guy was the other lion was super amped up and not really, he was too desperate. And so I've been trying to, and for the last 2 days, I've actually been maintaining, and it's just like dance all day long. Maintaining, like, stay in the flow state with my work, and just realizing that adding to it just sucks for everybody and for my health. And I constantly do that. It's like, how many tasks can I fit into a day? It's not like just do one task and then when that task is done, move to the next task. It's like, no, let's do that, and then while you're doing that task, try and, like, with your other hand, do this other task or something. And
It's not enjoyable.
no,
Life's
but
not
it's a
enjoyable.
frenzy. It's a frenzy that it's just hardwired into me. And he said, basically to sum up anxiety and overwhelm is just the only word that sums it up. He said is fear. It's fear. You're afraid of something. You're afraid it's all going to get the better of you. You're afraid of what people might say if you don't do such a task. Like, this fear is at the root of overwhelm. Because
So true.
yeah. And he said, if you can address the fear, yeah. Let's leave it there, shall we?
Shall we, at 2 hours
Because you are
and
getting
5
darker
minutes?
and darker.
Yeah, it is.
I can barely
It's
see
like
you, Abby.
8:30.
It's 4:30.
So yeah.
Well, maybe I'll try and talk Belinda into coming on, and we can carry on the Toronto
fun.
airport.
We've barely even broken through to that season, but we made a start.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. Talk to you soon. Love you.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Bye.